An HOA president was invading my apartment while I was out, and the hidden cameras I installed revealed a shocking scheme. Important documents disappeared, objects were moved, and my privacy was brutally violated. A real estate conspiracy, secrets of my late husband, and a web of lies came to light. This is a story about courage, truth, and justice that will make you question who really controls the place you call home. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment. Have you ever felt unsafe in your own home? You think your home is your castle? How wrong you are, my dear. I thought so too until I discovered my apartment had become some sort of personal playground for the president of my condo association. Yes, the very same one who smiles in the hallways, distributes notices about noise after 10, and complains about your laundry drying on the balcony. Mine was having a private party inside my apartment, and you won't believe what I found out. I've always been organized, the type who knows exactly where everything is. It's no wonder that after nearly 40 years of teaching noisy children, organization became almost a religion for me. My late Anthony always joked that I had an internal GPS for every object in the house. "Claire, you should work for the police. Finding lost things," he'd say, laughing. And it was true until things started disappearing or showing up in different places. At first, I thought it was just age. After all, once you hit 60, everyone starts to doubt their own memory, right? You know how it is. First, it was a picture frame I was sure I'd left on the living room bookshelf, but it appeared on the end table. Then a jewelry box my mother gave me. Not just any box, but that special carved wooden one she brought back from Santa Fe decades ago. It vanished for 3 days and then reappeared, but in a different drawer. I'm going crazy, I thought. I even asked my daughter Megan if she hadn't come over and moved things around. Of course, she looked at me like I had 2 heads. "Mum, I live out of state. How would I move your things?" But the last straw was when Anthony's pocket watch, the one that belonged to his father and his father's father, disappeared completely. I turned this apartment upside down looking for it. Nothing. That's when I realized something very strange was happening. By this point, I had lived in the Acacia Gardens for 20 years. I knew every corner, every noise, every neighbor, or so I thought. You know that feeling like someone's been in your house when you weren't there? Exactly. And it wasn't old lady paranoia either. It was real. This old teacher decided to run a test before leaving for my water aerobics class, which, by the way, is the only thing keeping my joints working. I discreetly marked the position of several objects with a strand of hair. Yes, a strand of hair. I strategically placed them between cabinet doors, drawers, and even on the refrigerator door. If someone opened them, the hair would fall. When I returned 3 hours later, guess what? Half the hairs were gone. Someone had been in my house, and it wasn't a ghost, honey. It was flesh and blood. That's when I got the idea that would change everything. I used my savings, the ones I was keeping for that cruise I never took, and bought 3 small cameras. Those modern ones that stay hidden and send the footage straight to your phone. Megan helped me choose them over the phone, amused by my suspicion. "Mom, you're watching too much Netflix," she said. Little did she know reality can sometimes be more suspenseful than any show. I installed one in the living room, disguised, among the books on the shelf. Another in my bedroom, inside the lamp, and the third in the kitchen, inside that plastic plant pot nobody ever looks at. Once that was done, I returned to my routine, leaving every day at the same time, as if nothing had changed. But inside I was simmering with curiosity and fear of discovering who was invading my privacy. On the 3rd day after installing the cameras, I was in my water aerobics class, doing those exercises that look more like an awkward dance in the water, when my phone vibrated. The camera app was alerting me, motion detected in the living room. I almost choked on the pool water in shock. I excused myself from the instructor and went to the locker room, trembling with anxiety. When I opened the app, I almost fell over. There she was, plain as day, Mrs. Gable, the HOA president, the same one who was always complaining about the noise my shoes made, who said my balcony plants clashed with the building's aesthetic. She was walking around my living room like she owned the place. And it wasn't an innocent visit, no. She opened drawers, shuffled through papers, took photos of documents with her phone, At one point, she went straight to the office where Anthony kept his work papers. I was paralyzed, staring at that tiny screen, watching my privacy being violated without any shame. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I wanted to scream, run home, confront her. But this old teacher didn't get to her 60s without learning a thing or two about strategy. I decided to wait, observe, find out what on earth that woman wanted. In the following days, the pattern repeated. Whenever I left for water aerobics, there she was, snooping around specific places. She didn't take anything, at least nothing. I could notice, but she photographed documents and sometimes moved things around, as if trying to confuse me, make me think I was losing my mind. A month passed, and my video archive grew, along with my indignation. I discovered my phone was tapped too. I caught her listening to my voicemails on my own device. I bought another phone the next day without telling anyone. I didn't even tell my daughter. The fewer people who knew, the better. It was during the annual Condo potluck, the one where everyone pretends to love each other while gossiping behind their backs, that I noticed something even stranger. People looked at me differently. Some neighbors I'd chatted with for years suddenly seemed to avoid me. Others whispered when I walked by. It was like I'd become a social leper overnight. At that same party, I met Mr. Arnold, a widowed gentleman who had just moved into the 5th-floor apartment. He was the only one who seemed genuinely interested in talking to me. We talked about books, about how the neighborhood had changed, about cake recipes. It was a relief to find someone normal in that sea of strangeness. "You've lived here a long time, haven't you, Mrs. Clare?" he asked while sipping punch. 20 years, I know every brick of this place. "And you like it here? I've always wanted to live in a historic area like this." Something about the question felt off, but I answered, "Anyway, yes I do, or at least I used to. Lately things have been different." He nodded as if he understood perfectly, and we changed the subject, but that conversation kept nagging at me. The following week, I decided to clean out Anthony's office. I hadn't touched those drawers in years. It was as if keeping everything untouched kept him there somehow. But if the HOA president was so interested in his documents, I needed to find out why. Among folders, yellowed papers, and old check stubs, I found a folder labeled Acacia Property Original. Inside, there was a deed and some maps. I was never good with documents. Anthony handled that part. But even I could tell this was important. It was the original deed to the land where our condo building was constructed. And from what I could gather, there was something very wrong with it. I spent the night studying those papers, trying to decipher the legalese with the help of internet searches. I discovered that the land for the Acacia Gardens had a complicated history. Originally, it belonged to an old farm that was subdivided in the 60s, but there were disputes over the legitimacy of some divisions. In other words, maybe our condos weren't legally ours. Meanwhile, I continued monitoring the HOA president's visits. She seemed increasingly frustrated, as if she couldn't find what she was looking for. In one video, I caught her talking to herself. "It has to be here. He was an accountant. He must have kept everything." I was so focused on the HOA president that I almost missed the other side of the conspiracy. Until, 6 weeks after installing the cameras, I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. I was walking back from the bakery when, in the little park across from the condo building, I spotted Mrs. Gable talking with Mr. Arnold. And it wasn't a casual chat. They were arguing heatedly, with maps spread out on a bench. I hid behind a tree, ridiculous for a woman my age, I know, but necessary, and tried to listen. I only caught fragments. She must have it somewhere. Deadline is approaching. Board meeting on Thursday. I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me. My only ally in the building was in cahoots with the HOA president. Now I was truly alone. That night I decided to research more about the neighborhood, about real estate projects, about anything that might give me clues. That's when I found a small news item, almost hidden on the City Hall website. Planning. Commission discusses revitalization of Central Historic District. In the photo accompanying the article, I immediately recognized Councilman Ronald Meyer, and next to him, smiling discreetly, was a woman I knew very well, HOA President Gable's cousin. The pieces started falling into place. Our condo building, was strategically located in the historic district, overlooking a lot that, according to public documents I found, was slated for projects of municipal interest. And what would that project be? A huge shopping mall, the kind with a movie theater and a food court. The annual Condo Association meeting was approaching, and Mrs. Gable announced there would be a special item of extreme importance on the agenda. When the big day arrived, the community room was packed, something unprecedented, as people usually avoided these meetings like the plague. "Dear residents," she began with that fake smile I knew so well, "I have news that will require everyone's understanding. We will need a significant increase in the HOA fees." General murmuring, complaints exactly as she expected. "Unfortunately, we've discovered serious structural problems in the building," she continued, pointing to a technical report full of incomprehensible terms and photos of cracks. "To ensure our safety, we need to begin urgent repairs." That's when I saw the game. Scare them with structural problems. Hike up the HOA fees absurdly. Force the residents, many elderly people on my fixed incomes like me, to sell their condos cheap. And who would buy them? Probably a developer connected to the councilman, her cousin, who would tear it all down to make way for the mall. While everyone discussed the increase, I asked to speak. Silence fell over the room as I stood up. Maybe they expected the crazy old lady, yes, I knew that's what some were calling me, to make some nonsensical comment. "Mrs. Gable," I began, feeling my heart pounding, "I'd like to understand these estimates better. $500,000 to replace some beams seems excessive." She gave a condescending smile. "Mrs. Clare, these are market rates. Do you know about structural engineering now?" "No," I replied calmly, "but I understand math. I taught it for 40 years, remember? And these numbers don't add up." Her smile faltered. I continued. "Besides, I find it curious that these structural problems appear just when there's a plan to build a shopping mall on the vacant lot next door." The whole room fell silent. Gable visibly paled. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "No? Then perhaps we should invite your cousin, Councilman Meyer, to explain. Or better yet, we could discuss why you've been entering my apartment without permission for the past few weeks." It was as if a bomb had gone off in the room. Everyone started talking at once, looking from me to her, confused and shocked. "This is absurd," she yelled. "Mrs. Clare is obviously senile. She's been making things up for weeks. Ask the doorman." I never entered her apartment. Calmly, I took my phone out of my pocket. "I have videos," I said simply, "of every time you entered. Going through my belongings, photographing documents, looking for the original deed for this land, the one that would invalidate several condo sales, including mine." I paused dramatically and added, "The same deed my husband kept all these years, because as an accountant, he knew it would be important someday." I saw Mr. Arnold shifting uncomfortably at the back of the room. I looked directly at him. "And I also have photos of you discussing the mall project with her. You underestimated the old teacher, didn't you?" Chaos erupted. Some residents shouted, demanding to see the videos. Others defended the HOA president, saying I was making it all up. Mrs. Gable tried to adjourn the meeting, but it was too late. The seed of doubt was planted. In the following days, I faced retaliation. My mail started being tampered with. The building's security system mysteriously failed when I tried to enter or leave. I found my car with a flat tire, and, worst of all, rumors about my mental health began to circulate. Poor thing. Ever since her husband died, she hasn't been the same. But I didn't give up. I catalogued every incident, photographed every piece of evidence, and, most importantly, I made copies of all the documents I found and sent them to a lawyer and my daughter, Megan. 2 weeks after the meeting, I received a call that would change everything. It was Megan. "Mom, you won't believe this," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Remember I work at that architecture firm? I just found out we have the preliminary blueprints for a shopping mall. And guess where it's supposed to be built? Exactly where the acacia garden stands." I felt a mix of vindication and horror. "I knew it. Megan, I need those blueprints. Can you send them to me?" "Better than that, Mom. I'm coming down. I'll be there tomorrow." With Megan by my side, my investigations gained new momentum. As an architect, she understood blueprints, projects, and most importantly, knew how to debunk a fraudulent technical report. Together we analyzed the document Mrs. Gable had presented. "This is blatant fraud, Mom," Megan said after studying the report. "These photos aren't even from our building. Look at the floor pattern. It's completely different. And this signature, the engineer isn't even registered with the state licensing board." It was like striking gold, but I still needed to understand why the HOA president was so obsessed with Anthony's documents. That's when I remembered a detail. Anthony had worked for the construction company that built the Acacia Gardens. As an accountant, he had access to all the financial and legal records. 9 weeks after installing the cameras, I noticed a pattern to the intrusions. Mrs. Gable always entered my apartment on days that coincided with City Planning Commission meetings. This couldn't be a coincidence. During the city's anniversary celebrations, I ran into Susan, a former colleague who now worked in the city planning department. After we caught up, I casually mentioned the revitalization projects for the neighborhood. "Oh, Claire, that whole mess," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's absurd what they're trying to do, approve a project of that scale in a historic area. But you know how it is. When politicians and developers are involved, the rules change." "So how are things now?" "Any news?" I asked, trying to sound only casually interested. "Actually, the project is stalled. They found irregularities in the land documentation. It seems the area where your condo building is has problems with the original deed. They're desperate to find the correct version." Bingo, that was exactly what Gable was looking for in my apartment. The document that could resolve, or further complicate, the legal status of the land. And I had that document. The final confrontation happened in a way even I couldn't have predicted. 3 months after starting my investigation, Mrs. Gable called an extraordinary meeting. The topic? Proposal for a collective sale of the condominium due to irreversible structural problems. The room was jam-packed. This time, Gable came prepared. She brought Mr. Arnold, who introduced himself as a real estate consultant, and 3 men in suits who were vaguely introduced as interested investors. "Dear neighbors," she began in a sickeningly sweet voice that made me nauseous. "After further analysis, we've discovered the structural problems are even more severe than we imagined. The good news is that we have buyers willing to offer us a fair value for our condos, allowing everyone to start over somewhere safer." Panic spread. Many there, like me, were elderly people who had invested their life savings in those apartments. Starting over wasn't an option. That's when something unexpected happened. A storm that had been brewing for hours finally broke. Lightning struck nearby, and the lights in the room went out. In the dark, with only the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the room, I felt a courage I hadn't felt in decades. "We don't need lights to see the truth, do we, Mrs. Gable?" Now my voice sounded louder and firmer than I expected. "The truth is there are no structural problems. There's just a group of greedy people wanting to kick us out to pocket millions with a shopping mall." In the flash of lightning, I saw her, face twisted in anger. "You have no proof of anything, you crazy old woman." "I have all the proof. I have the videos of you invading my apartment. I have the fake report you presented, debunked by a professional architect, my daughter. I have the blueprints for the mall they plan to build here. And most importantly, I have the original deed you were looking for so desperately." There was a collective gasp of surprise. "What you don't know," I continued, "is why this deed is so important. My husband told me shortly before he died. This property has a special clause. If it's converted into a commercial development, 30% of the profits must go to a municipal historic preservation fund. That's why you were so desperate to find and destroy this document, wasn't it?" The lights suddenly came back on, revealing the pale faces of Gable and her accomplices. From the back of the room, one of the oldest residents stood up. "Mrs. Clare is right. I remember when we bought these condos. There was that clause, but they assured us the building would always be residential." Other residents began to speak, up remembering details, asking questions. The tide was turning. I saw Mr. Arnold and the investors start to move discreetly towards the exit. Gable was alone now, cornered by questions and accusations. "You don't understand," she tried to argue, her voice almost pleading. "This neighborhood is going to change, whether you like it or not. It's progress. We could all profit from this." "Progress?" I asked, approaching her. "Destroying a historic building, displacing dozens of families, ruining the character of the neighborhood. Is that progress to you? Or is it just greed? At that moment, something snapped in Mrs. Gable. Her face contorted into a mask of pure rage. You think you're so clever, don't you? I always knew, so that apartment should have been mine. I was next in line to buy it when your husband showed up with a higher offer. 20 years waiting for a chance to get it back, and now you, with your damned cameras. The confession shocked everyone. It wasn't just about the mall, about money. It was also about a personal resentment that had festered for 2 decades. In the following days, the fallout was swift. Mrs. Gable resigned as HOA president. Mr. Arnold put his condo up for sale and disappeared. And, most importantly, the shopping mall project was suspended indefinitely after we took the evidence to the local press and the district attorney's office. The afternoon coffees I used to host, which had dwindled due to the rumors about my sanity, resumed now with record attendance. Neighbors who barely greeted me before now stopped for long chats in the hallway, wanting to know more details about my investigation. 3 months later, I was surprised by a group of residents knocking on my door. "Mrs. Clare," said Mr. Duval, a retiree from the 3rd floor, "we've come with a proposal. We'd like you to consider running for HOA president in the next election." I was speechless for a moment. Me, HOA president? In my late 60s, starting a new role? "We're thinking of a transparent administration," continued Mrs. Gertrude, a widow I'd always found rather unpleasant. "With regular financial reporting, collective decisions, a model for other condo associations." I looked at these people, my neighbors, my community. I realized something had changed in me too. The fear and suspicion I'd felt since I started noticing strange things in my apartment had been replaced by something different, a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. "I'll think about it carefully," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. And I did think. For a whole week. I reflected on everything that had happened, on how I had found courage I didn't know I possessed, on how I had protected not just my home, but a whole way of life. In the end, I accepted the nomination, not because I wanted power or recognition, but because I understood that true security comes from a strong, united community. And to build that, someone needed to take the first step. Today, almost a year later, our condo building is different. We implemented a transparent management system that has become a benchmark for other buildings in the neighborhood. The meetings are productive and well attended. The hallways are more alive, with neighbors who actually know and care about each other. The cameras I installed are still there in my apartment, not because I'm afraid, but as a reminder. A reminder that even when it seems the whole world is against you, it's worth fighting for what's yours. A reminder that we're never too old to make a difference. And most importantly, a reminder that sometimes a grey-haired old lady can be the worst nightmare for the corrupt. Oh, and as for that trespassing HOA president, I hear she's facing charges for trespassing, document forgery, and conspiracy. It seems, after all, not everyone can just walk into someone else's home uninvited. And that, my dears, is the story of how I discovered my home really is my castle, but only because I had the courage to fight for it. What about you? Have you checked if anyone's messing with your kingdom while you're not looking?